Imagine a corporation owning a human being from, their very first breath. Like, they legally adopt you, they place you in this massive enclosed environment, and they broadcast every second of your life.
And nobody does anything about it.
Right. Nobody sues, nobody marches in the streets. Millions of people they just subscribe and tune in. And that isn't some fringe conspiracy theory.
No, it's really not.
It is the exact unhidden premise of a 1998 movie that you've probably seen, millions watched, and almost no one actually understood.
Yeah, which is exactly why we're here.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are going on a really forensic, unflinching examination of a massive blind spot in modern media criticism. We're prosecuting the text today, looking at what happens when a system engineers a false reality, and more importantly, the terrible unpaid cost of proving that reality wrong.
And I think it's important to say up front, we are not going to soften the edges here.
No, definitely not.
We're going to bypass all that comfortable therapy speak because the subject matter really demands it. I mean, we're talking about the Truman Show, yes, but we aren't really talking about Jim Carrey in a giant dome.
Right.
We are looking at the load-bearing legal mechanism that actually built Truman's cage. And it's a mechanism that a recent, highly praised piece of media criticism just completely ignores.
Okay, so let's set the stage for you. A lot of people have been talking about this specific 46-minute video essay called It's Worse for You.
Yeah, it's been making the rounds.
Exactly. And as a piece of systems criticism, it is honestly incredibly well done. I mean, the essayist breaks down why human beings hand back evidence of a false reality. He brings up Plato's cave.
Which is that ancient idea of prisoners chained to a wall, right?
Right, mistaking shadows for absolute reality because it's literally all they've ever seen. And he talks of the guards who love you, and fear is a tearing instrument. It's, it's dense, thoughtful stuff.
It really is. I mean, he's clearly trained to spot the invisible seams in how media and systems control us. He's doing the exact job of a cultural critic.
Which is why I am so baffled by what happens next.
Oh, it's glaring.
Okay, let's unpack this because here's where it gets really interesting. At exactly the 7-minute and 46-second mark of this 46-minute video, the essayist reads out the film's exact foundational premise.
Right out loud.
Yes. He says out loud, quote, Truman was the first baby legally adopted by a corporation. They picked him out of 6 unwanted pregnancies because he was born on cue.
He literally calls this a detail a lot of people don't even notice.
Right. He reads the elephant's name tag out loud. He explicitly acknowledges that a company owned a human being from its first breath. And then
it just moves on.
He proceeds to absolutely not notice it himself. For the remaining 38 minutes of the video, the word adoption never returns.
It just vanishes.
It vanishes. He pivots immediately to talking about product placement. Like he starts analyzing cocoa boxes. I have to genuinely ask you, how does someone do that?
I know, it's wild.
How does a critic trained to hunt for the seams in reality walk past something that explicit?
Yeah.
How do you say a corporation legally adopted a baby and then just, I don't know, file it away as background noise?
Well, it's because to the essayist, and honestly to the vast majority of the audience watching, that mechanism isn't a horror.
Right.
It isn't a seam in reality. It's just plumbing. Yeah. It's weather. But if we actually strip away the sentiment and look at the paperwork of the dome, we have to ask the question that the video essay never asks.
What is?
By what mechanism does a corporation come to own a human being lawfully? Because it wasn't kidnapping. Right. It wasn't enslavement. It wasn't some invented high-tech sci-fi ray gun. The film names the real existing instrument, which is an adoption order.
So the dome, the cameras, the actors, all of that is just set dressing.
Precisely. The load-bearing structure of Truman's captivity is entirely legal, and it existed long before Hollywood.
Let's get into that, because the source material goes deep on this.
Right. Let's look at what adoption actually is under the law. Functionally, it is a state-sanctioned order that transfers a child. It extinguishes that child's prior identity.
Wow.
Yeah. And then it issues a falsified birth record, presenting the acquiring party as though the child had been physically born to them.
Just legally wiping the slate.
Exactly. It seals the true historical record against the very person it describes, and it licenses money to move around the transfer.
Okay, well, hold on. I need to push back here just based on what we're reading, because calling it a falsified birth record or phrasing it as licensing money around a transfer.
It sounds harsh.
It's an incredibly heavy clinical way to describe this.
Yeah.
If you ask most people on the street, adoption is a rescue. It's a family opening their home to a child who needs one. Using words like transfer and falsified, how does the text legally justify framing it that way?
I totally understand why that sounds jarring, but we have to look at the legal mechanics, not the cultural marketing. When a birth certificate is amended to list adoptive parents as the biological parents of origin, that is, by definition, a state-mandated falsification of a historical event.
Right. The biological event didn't happen with those people.
Exactly. The film just changed one single variable to expose the absurdity of it. They made the acquiring party a corporation instead of a couple. And audiences in 1998 gasped in horror at this dystopian premise, while that exact legal machinery was operating unremarked in every jurisdiction on Earth.
Okay, I see what you mean. When you put a corporation in the paperwork, suddenly everyone sees the transaction.
Exactly. And look at the scale of that transaction. In the United States alone, the industry built on that state-issued stamp of approval is worth an estimated $29.4 billion as of 2025.
$29.4 billion. That is massive.
And the film even feeds you the industry's own vocabulary. Truman was picked out of 6 quote-unquote unwanted pregnancies.
Which is entirely a procurer's word. A detail that really stuck with me from our reading is that no mother in that scenario is ever asked if she feels her pregnancy is unwanted.
No, of course not.
It functions as a search engine funnel aimed at pregnant women in crisis.
Yeah.
But even hearing that $29.4 billion figure, my brain instinctively wants to defend the system.
Which is the standard cultural defense.
Yeah, it's the everybody would have to be in on it argument. Like if it were really a multi-billion-dollar traffic in human beings, the whole society would have to be complicit.
And that phrase you just used, everybody would have to be in on it, is actually the most lethal sentence in the film. Because it explains exactly why the culture refuses to look at the mechanism.
What do you mean?
What's fascinating here is a phenomenon called non-adoptee bias. We asked earlier how the video essayist could just ignore the word adoption, right?
Yeah, how he walked right past it.
Well, he didn't intentionally censor it. He didn't have to. The word arrived pre-neutralized in his brain. To non-adopted people, the legal transfer of a human being is filed under plot convenience. It's an architecture of silence.
An architecture of silence.
Right. It doesn't censor the truth. It just makes the word harmless before it even lands.
That immediately reminds me of the famous quote from Christoph, the creator of the dome in the movie. He says, "We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented." It's as simple as that.
Yes, because if you, as a viewer, acknowledge that adoption as legally constructed is a state-licensed traffic in children, think about what that costs you.
It costs you a lot of your worldview.
Right. To accept that claim, you have to re-examine the family courts, your church, your local legislators. You have to re-examine the kind couple at the school gate, and possibly your own family members.
The essayist actually brings up Leon Festinger's cognitive dissonance research in his video, which blew my mind because he applies it to literally everything except adoption.
Right. He totally misses the most obvious application.
Festinger's law basically states that the more you have paid for a belief, the more being proven wrong can cement it even further.
Yes. And society has paid heavily for the rescue narrative of adoption. They've paid with their self-image, their moral order, their institutions. So when presented with the paperwork, the billions of dollars, the sealed records,
the belief just eats the disproof.
Exactly. It eats the disproof and gets stronger. People retreat to, well, everybody would have to be in on it, so it can't be bad. The cost of the truth is too high, so the truth is priced out of reach.
But here's where the story splits. Because while the non-adopted public can just comfortably ignore this, the people actually living inside this mechanism, the adoptees, experience something unimaginably insidious.
Which brings us to the inversion.
Right. Which brings us to the cruelest fact in all of this. It's a psychiatric inversion that honestly start me in my tracks. Have you ever heard of the Truman Show Delusion?
It was cataloged shortly after the film's release, wasn't it?
Yes. In 1998, psychiatrists began documenting this totally new phenomenon. Patients were going into clinics genuinely believing their lives were a broadcast.
Wow.
Yeah, they believed their birth documents were falsified. They believed their family was just a group of people performing roles assigned by an institution. They believed the story of their origin was entirely staged. Believing you were owned, recorded, and had your identity managed by an outside force was literally cataloged as a psychiatric symptom.
Now, I want you to sit with what that means for a person separated by adoption. Imagine going to a doctor and they tell you that believing your birth certificate is fake and that your family was assembled by a legal institution is a delusion.
But it's not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Adoptees are gaslit with the exact vocabulary of a psychiatric condition, except they can produce the factual proof on paper.
Right. When an adoptee says, my documents are falsified, it is not a metaphor. It is a literal government document with a registration number.
It's sitting right there in a file cabinet.
When they say, records about me exist that I am forbidden to read, it is not paranoia. It is a state statute. When they say, my origin was staged, it is the literal truth of their placement. Every single clause of that so-called delusion is legally documented and on file.
They are trapped in a reality where they hold the receipts to their own supposed insanity, and the conditioning used to keep them from looking at those files is identical to the film.
For us, so.
Well, how do they keep Truman on the island? They install a phobia of water. The exit is guarded by fear. For adoptees, the conditioning arrives dressed as love.
Oh, wow. It's gratitude.
Yeah.
It's loyalty. It's people saying, don't hurt the people who raised you, or, you have a great life. Why would you need to search for your biological family?
It's the guards who love you. In the film, Truman's wife doesn't point a gun at him and order him to stay. She says, you need rest. You're not yourself.
Concern functions as a leash.
Precisely. They keep him organized inside of the lie by making him feel like stepping outside of it would be a betrayal of the very people caring for him.
So if the walls are made of concern and sealed documents, how do you get out? You can't just believe your way out. If you argue, you just sound crazy.
No, you can't argue your way out. And look at what Truman does. He doesn't argue. He checks his way out.
He predicts the pattern.
Exactly. He sits in his car and he predicts the loop. The lady on the bike, the man with the flowers, the Volkswagen with the dented fender.
He runs experiments against his own reality.
Right, until the pattern confesses. And once he has the undeniable data, he sails directly into the fear that was installed to keep him. He sails into the water.
And this is the exact real-world parallel to the modern adoptee rights method that we're seeing in the sources. If Truman predicting the traffic is the experiment, then for adoptees, the DNA test is predicting the traffic.
It's a forensic verification of the lie.
Right. When a DNA test comes back, you have data that the state cannot seal. And the records access campaigns, the legislative pushes, that's the boat.
It's the concrete method of dismantling the dome. You don't ask for permission. You read the industry's own paperwork forensically. You file freedom of information requests.
And we are seeing this method actually work. I mean, just look at the legislative landscape right now. In California, Senate Bill 381 passed by a vote of 35 to none.
Which is huge.
And we need to explain what that actually means, because it's not just a boring legal update. Historically, adoptive parents could legally order a birth certificate with the birthplace, and the parent's race completely omitted.
It's wiped out.
They could literally erase a child's racial origin from the state record. SB 381 abolished that provision. Every single witness spoke in favor of abolishing it. Not one person testified against it.
Wow.
And Virginia's House Bill 301 just took effect, making Virginia the 17th state to restore adult adoptees' access to their original birth records. Every opened record is like a hole punching through painted drywall.
The method works. The exit is real. Wait, but if the walls are made of concern and sealed documents, how do you get out? You can't just believe your way out. Okay, wait, shouldn't records access be the happy ending? We just talked about these massive legislative victories.
You think so, right?
If the whole goal is breaking the dome and the door is literally open, why are we talking about this like it's a tragedy? 17 states have restored access. Isn't that a massive win?
It is a win. Legally, structurally, it is a triumph. But this is exactly where the culture stops watching. This is where the true existential horror begins.
I don't fully understand. If you get your records, you win, right?
Let's go back to the film. Truman sails through the door. The DNA test confirms the lie. You have the original unredacted documents in your hand. You have absolute, undeniable proof that the cage was real and that you were right all along.
What happened?
And then you stand completely alone on the outside.
Because nobody follows you out. Nobody. The people who loved you inside the dome cannot follow you out. The wife who used concern as a leash cannot step through that door, because doing so requires her to admit that her concern was the mechanism that kept you caged.
Oh, that is brutal.
It is. The family members who kept you, quote-unquote, organized inside the lie through love and care, they cannot afford to see that their love and care functioned as the bars of a cell.
This goes right back to Festinger's law, doesn't it? Yeah. The more you have paid for a belief, the more being proven wrong can cement it even further. We think of proof as something that changes minds. If I hand you a document that proves I'm right, I expect you to say, oh, I see now. But Festinger says the opposite happens.
It deepens the divide. The people who raised you have paid for the rescue narrative with their entire identity.
Right.
Their faith in their own goodness, their standing in their community, their understanding of what a family is. It's all built on the premise that they saved you.
So the truth is actually a threat.
A lethal threat. Your proof, your original birth certificate, your DNA test, is a lethal threat to their entire moral order. The more undeniable your proof is, the harder they must defend the rescue narrative just to survive your own dissonance.
There's a character in the film, Sylvia. She's the actress who breaks character and tells Truman the truth. She makes herself findable on the outside. But what really hits hard from our reading is realizing that for an adoptee, breaking character isn't a tactic you can just deploy in small doses to help your family understand.
No. For an adoptee, Sylvia's lesson is the severance. It is the door itself. And when you walk through it, you are carrying a truth that absolutely nobody in your life can afford to see or acknowledge.
That is just, it's so heavy.
You have the documents. You know who you are. And you are entirely alone with the knowledge.
This is the part that is so unflinching and honestly, so heartbreaking in the analysis. The culture desperately wants to celebrate the legislative win. The adoptee rights movement celebrates the open records, and they should. But nobody wants to acknowledge the ache and the heaviness of standing on the other side of that door.
Right.
Imagine holding the piece of paper you fought your whole life for, turning around to share it with your family, and finding out they can't even look at you anymore.
This raises the most important question about what this system actually built.
Yeah.
It's not a tragedy because there is no way out. The method exists. The records can be opened.
Yeah.
It is a tragedy because the method works and the cost of being right is still unpaid. The system didn't just engineer a false reality with paperwork and money. It engineered the permanent isolation that follows the exit.
Because you can't take them with you.
Exactly. It built the cage, and it simultaneously built the mechanism that ensures you cannot share the knowledge of the cage with the people closest to you.
You are abandoned again. Because nobody wants to see you properly on the other side of the exit. That is the existential crisis that adoptees are just not allowed to process. Because if an adoptee says, I got my records and it destroyed my family, society just tells them they're being ungrateful.
Or that they should just be happy they got their records at all.
Right.
Ultimately, Truman prefers his cell. Do you remember when Christoph says that in the film?
Yeah, right near the end.
He tells Truman, out there is just as much lying, just as much pain. In here, people love you. In here, it is safe. Christoph is making the exact pitch the system makes to anyone thinking of auditing their own reality. Don't look at the truth, because the truth will cost you everyone you love.
And Truman walks through anyway. He takes the bow and he steps into the dark. But we never get to see the aftermath. The camera just cuts off.
Because the culture will not watch it. The essence of adoption's legal structure is designed to make the aftermath invisible. Not just the cage itself, but the crushing loneliness of being proven right. That's what stays with you, and that's what the culture refuses to hold.
It fundamentally changes how you look at the film, doesn't it? And how you look at media criticism that refuses to name the mechanism. The Truman Show isn't speculative fiction at all.
Not even a little bit.
It is a closed-circuit, perfectly scaled demonstration of adoption's legal framework. It shows the transfer of a child, the performance of love, the conditioning of gratitude to guard the exit, and finally, the engineered isolation once the truth is verified on paper.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it leaves us with a necessary, if uncomfortable, audit of our own worldviews. The system relies entirely on our collective refusal to look at the seams.
Because looking at the seams implicates us.
Yes. It implicates the viewer who tuned in. It implicates the subscriber.
Everybody would have to be in on it. Turns out everybody kind of is.
Exactly. So I'll leave you with this final thought. If our society is willing to look right at the legal mechanism of human ownership, the falsification of identity, the billion-dollar industry, and call it a plot device just to protect our comfort, what other foundational rescue narratives are you fiercely defending right now? What other cages are you refusing to see simply because auditing your own dissonance would cost you your comfortable view of yourself?
That is incredibly heavy. But it is exactly what we need to sit with. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah.
Don't just accept the reality of the world with which you are presented. Keep checking the walls. We'll see you next time.